Hi there and welcome. I'm Darren White, Learning Technologies Leader from New Rickstones and Maltings Academies, and I'm also one of the team of lead innovators at Academies Enterprise Trust. In this session, we will focus on Google Forms, looking at how to open Google Forms, how to title your form, adding different types of questions, and sending the forms and viewing responses afterwards. So let's get started. First of all, there are several ways to start a Google form. One option is to go to your waffle in the top right-hand corner of your screen and to click and to access forms that way. Equally, you can go to your Google Drive and you can click on New, and you'll notice that Forms doesn't appear until you hit the More section. And then you have the option for Forms and the further option for blank form or from a template. And that's a really useful option because Google Forms already has a whole load of templates there for you. So if we click on From a Template, that's going to take us to the Google Forms homepage. And we can see here that we have two tabs, General and then Your Own Domain. And for me, that's the Academy's Enterprise Trust. So here we've got some AET standard templates, but under General, you've also got ready-made templates that you can use or adapt, including exit tickets, worksheets, evaluations, sign-ups, find a time options, event registrations, even things like job applications and time and work requests. So really useful options, and you can just click on any of those to open them. So if I click on the exit ticket here, it's going to open a brand new version of it for me. And I've got the edit view, so I can change that if I want. So I can edit the title, or I can edit any of the questions and edit the settings as well. But I'm not going to do that at the moment because we're going to start from the basics. So I'm going to close both of those windows, and I'm going to show you the quickest way to open a Google form, which is in a new window, to just simply type forms.new. And once you've done it a few times, your browser will even recognize that, and probably after the F and the O, it will pop up and you can just press enter. Okay, so that brings me to a brand new Google form. And at the moment, it's called Untitled Form. It's got the title there as Untitled Form, and there's no form description. And at the moment, it's telling me that this form is automatically collecting email addresses for Academy's Enterprise Trust users, and gives me the option to change that if I want. So if I wanted students or staff to respond, that would be perfect. If I want parents to respond or members of the community, I would need to change that setting by just clicking Change Settings. And here I would not restrict it. So I would unclick the restrict option there. I've also got the option to limit it to one response and for people to see submissions, and also whether or not I want to collect email addresses. So we'll come back to that later on perhaps. So at the moment, this form is collecting email addresses and it's not set to my domain. So the first thing I want to do is to give it a title. So I'm going to click up the top here and I'm going to give my form a title. So I'm going to call this one Session Feedback. Okay. And what I'm now going to do is just click off of there, and that will save that. If I click up the top here, just like in Docs and in Slides, it automatically names it the same as that title for me. If you do it in reverse and you put the title here, it won't automatically update there. Okay, so now we've got our titled Session Feedback form. We might want to add a description in here, and that can be anything you want. So please provide feedback on the training session you attended. Okay, now you might want to send this to all of your staff or all of your students, but they might have attended different things. So one of the things you can do now that you've titled your form and you've got it open and you've told people what you want to do, just correct the spelling on that, it's going to ask them for their email address, and you'll notice it's got the little red star, which means it's a required question. They can't skip that. And then you can decide what the first question is that you want them to be. So it might be, what session did you attend? Okay. So in untitled question here, I'm just going to type in, which session did you attend? Okay. And you'll notice it's automatically recognized that because of the wording of my question, I'm asking for a choice of some description. So it's suggested making it a multiple choice question. Okay. I definitely don't want people to skip this. So I'm just going to turn this on as a required question. Okay. And just make sure that that little slider is purple. If I want to copy this question and make a copy of it, I can just click here. If I want to get rid of it, I can click here. And if I click here, I get some different options like adding a description like we did at the top, or go to section based on answer. And that's a section we're going to use in a moment. I can also shuffle option order if I want, so that not everybody gets the question in the same order. If you don't want people looking over each other's shoulders and saying, oh, they selected C, I'm going to do the same. So let's name some sessions first of all. So in option 1, I'm just going to call this one, first of all, verbal feedback. Okay, so you can type them in manually, but equally, if you've got a list in a spreadsheet or anything like that, you can copy and paste them in and it will add them on separate lines. So we had a session on verbal feedback, for example. We had a section on effective marking, and we had a section on pastoral care. Okay, so there's a choice of 3 there. I'm not going to add other, although I could, because these are the only 3 options. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some feedback style questions for each of these sessions. But I want to make sure that everything's kept separately when it comes to reviewing the form. So what I'm going to do is add a section. So I'm going to add 3 sections, 1 for each of these. So I'm going to add a section 1. The first thing I'm going to do is title this section verbal feedback session. Okay, so I've created that. Then I'm going to create another section. There we go. And I'm going to call this one effective marking session. And then I'm going to create one final one, which I'm going to call pastoral care session. Okay, so I've now got 3 sections. I haven't got any questions in them yet, but I've got my 3 sessions set up. Now I'm going to come back to this first question where we asked what section did they attend, and I'm going to turn on the go to section based on answer. And what we can see here is that all of them at the moment, depending, even if you answer any one of the 3, they're automatically going to go to the next section. But I've now got a drop down here. So I'm going to choose on this one that if they've answered verbal feedback, they're going to go to section 2, verbal feedback. Okay, I'm going to select on this one, if they've answered effective marking, they're going to go to effective marking section. And if they've answered pastoral care, they're going to go to the pastoral care sections. Okay, so that's the first part of that. Then what I need to do is to make sure that if that's finished at the end of it, if they attended the feedback session, when they get to the end of that section, I don't want them to then go on to effective marking. So here, I'm going to choose that after they've filled that in, they're going to submit the form. And if they went to the effective marking section, after they've done that section, they're going to submit the form. Otherwise, they'll automatically progress on to pastoral care session. And because this is the last session, that automatically goes to submit anyway. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now in this first section, or this second section about the actual questions, I'm going to add in a question. And the way I do that is just to click the plus button. So I'm going to click the plus, and it adds a question. It's suggested multiple choice first of all. But on this one, I would like to choose a linear scale. Okay, so I'm just going to ask, how would you rate this session? I actually type. There we go. Okay, and it's got here 1 to 5, and the labels are optional. So label 1 might be inadequate. My spelling. Oh, dear me. And label 5 might be outstanding. Okay. Now, if you're anything like me, you don't like giving 5 options because that means people can sit on the fence in the middle. So you can change that to just the 4, and it matches the Ofsted grading effectively. Equally, you could reverse it and have 1 as outstanding and 4 as inadequate. It's entirely up to you, and you would make that a required question. Okay. Now, if you want that same question to be asked later on in the other sections, you can just make a copy of it. How would you rate this session? Grab the little domino effect up the top here and drag it down into the next section. We drag it into section 3. Oh, that's gone into section 4. Apologies. So let's just make another copy of that. Here we go. Take the little domino, drag it to section 3. There we go. So we've now got that same question in all 4, but it's going to pull through the results separately so that when we look at it in our spreadsheet, they're going to be separate answers for each thing, even though effectively it's the same question. Okay, so we've just asked how would you rate this session, first of all, on a linear scale. Now I'm going to go back to section 2 again. I'm going to add another question. This time, I'm going to want a free type. Okay, so short answer. What was your biggest takeaway? Okay, and obviously we don't mean your biggest takeaway for dinner, but your biggest takeaway from the session. So we might want to make sure that we're absolutely clear on that. And we could make that a short answer or a paragraph if we think they might want to write more. And we can choose a required question again. And again, we can choose response validation now. So instead of going to a section based on your answer, you can come here and you can choose how long you want the answer to be so that people can't put really long answers or really short answers. You could choose that it must include certain things. So I'm going to say here that I don't want too much in there. So I want a maximum of 100 characters. Okay. And my error text, if they go above that, is going to be must be less than 100 characters. Okay. So that if they get the error, they know what they've got to change. And again, I can just duplicate that now, drag it into section 3, and then duplicate that again, and grab the domino and drag it into section 4. So I've got copies of each section as we go through there. And finally, I'm going to have one more type of question. So I'm just going to click add, and it doesn't matter which section you're in when you do it. I'm going to click, actually, let's make sure we're on the bottom question. Just going to click the plus sign. And this time round, I could choose to have them upload something. So it could be the file like evidence or a photo or something like that of a piece of work that they've done during the session. I could make it a drop down. I can make a checkbox or a tick grid, or I could ask them a date or a time. I can even add a video and things like that. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them to put a date in there. Please enter the date you wish to meet with your coach. Okay. They're going to enter a date, a month, a year, and we're going to make it a required question. So off the back of the training, they're going to meet with their coach to work on things. And again, make a duplicate, drag it down into that section. That's gone in the wrong section. So if you end up with anything in the wrong section, you can just drag them along and just move them into the right place and just drag another one over the top of it. Sometimes they jump around a little bit depending on the size of your screen. Okay, so we got section 2 there, verbal feedback, ends with enter the date you wish. Section 3 finishes with enter the date you wish. And we're just going to make a final copy of that and drag that into section 4. Okay. And you'll notice we've got a rogue question in here that's just popped in. If that ever happens and you don't need it, you can just delete that question altogether. It's not a problem. And what will happen now is at the end of the completing this form, the people that are completing it will get the option to submit. So let me show you how that works. When it comes to sending the form, there are a number of ways you can do it. But the first thing you want to do is preview to make sure your form is okay. And the way you would do that is to come up to the eye here and click the preview button. And this is the view that anyone receiving your form would see. So I'm just going to enter my email address in here. And I'm going to say that I attended the verbal feedback meeting. I click next. It's taken me to the verbal feedback session. I would say it was a good session. My biggest takeaway was voice recording comments. and the date. And you can see for the date, you can click on the calendar and select the one that you want to use. So it's really easy to say, actually, I'd like to meet just before half term. So let's say that week beginning or anything like that. And I can choose to have a copy of my responses sent to me. Now I just click the submit button, and that's my form completed. Now you can see here that I can submit another response. So I could fill it in again. If I don't want that in the form as the owner, I can come in and I can change that to limit to one response, and it won't let me complete it again. Okay, that's entirely up to you. So there's my response completed, and we'll see immediately now that's pulled through and told me that I've got a response. So if I want to view the response from my participants, I click on responses. The first thing I get is a summary, which produces graphs for me that it thinks it will be useful. Okay, it starts to pull through here the dates that are common and gives the answers to the questions. And you'll notice that the questions I didn't go to haven't got any answers yet. So that's the overall summary. But I can also look on a question by question basis. So I can see who's answered each question and how they've answered it. And I can view the options and hide them. And I can scroll through multiple answers on multiple questions. So that was question 1, question 2, question 3. I can also look at individual responses. So this is my own personal response. And you'll see here that I can print that response or even just save it to my Google Drive or save it as a PDF if I'd like to. But you can see it's just there as a paper version effectively. Okay, I'm not going to worry about doing that, but it is an option for you. So that's one way you can see the options, the answers that people have given. If you want to stop receiving answers from people in the responses section, you can just turn off accepting responses. Okay, and anyone trying to access it will just get that message. This form is no longer accepting responses. However, you can just turn it on again that quickly. So really straightforward. So the other way of sending the form to people is to go to the send button, obviously. And you've got a number of options. You can either send it by email. So let me do it again. I'm going to send it to the same email address because I've allowed myself to complete it more than once. And it's going to give me the option, the subject of the email is going to be session feedback. The message is going to be, I've invited you to fill in a form. And I can choose to have the form actually included in the email so that the recipient doesn't even have to click out of that. So that's one option. I can just click send on that. Okay. Or the other thing I can do is to get the URL link, and I can shorten it to a much shorter one, copy that, paste it into an email or into a comment myself and send that to my colleagues. Or I can even embed it using the iframe HTML into a Google site, for example. So you can drop that into a Google site so that everyone can access it directly. Okay, but I'm going to go with the email version just so that you can see it in action. And I'm going to click send. Okay, and that forwarded email is invalid because I think I forgot. No, that's fine. Why is that not allowing that to send? Let's do that again. There we go, and send. And that's now sent me an email. Now, if I go to my emails, so I can click in and read that, but within my Gmail, it tells me fill out a form, and I can just click that and bump straight to it. And then I've got the option to fill that form out again. So this time I'm going to fill it out slightly differently, just so we can see the changes. I'm going to say I went to the pastoral care section. I thought that was outstanding. My biggest takeaway was mental health awareness for students. And I'm going to meet with my coach this time a little bit earlier, just as a review. So I'm going to say September the 17th is when we want to meet. I'll have a copy of my responses and I'll submit that. Okay, so let me just close that and go back to the original form. And we can see immediately it's now showing 2 responses. So I can toggle between the 2 here. There's my first response. Here's my second response with the pastoral care. I can go to the questions and we can see I've now got different questions, and I can go to the summary and we can see that our pie chart now starts to build and look a little bit more impressive. Okay, the verbal feedback there, We scroll down, then we've got the partial care session, and obviously there's nothing yet for the one in the middle for the effective marking because nobody's selected that. Now, the final thing is if I want to look at those responses in a different way, I can create a spreadsheet here, and I can either select an existing spreadsheet and add it to it, or just create a new spreadsheet, which is what I'm going to do. Click Create. That automatically is going to create in my Google Drive. It opens it up for me, and here I've got the timestamp of when the form was filled in, and all of the results are in here. So you can start to scroll through and see all of those results. And of course, if you use the Explore button, what it will start to do, the more data you've got, it will start to give you suggested graphs and things like that for the different questions you've been asked. So you don't have to really do any of the legwork. It's really straightforward. Okay, so that's how we can add different sorts of questions and then get our responses and start to interrogate the responses and analyze the responses based on what people have said. So thanks very much for joining us today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and make sure you don't miss our other innovator sessions throughout this summer. And join us again next time.